Thanks for joining me in painting this hare. You can see I've got my reference photo here. This is actually one of my own paintings that I'm just revisiting because I want to see if I can make a looser job of it. So I've got a rough drawing here and we'll get started with, I'm going to go straight in with one of my new and my most favourite colours, a phthalo blue. It's a turquoisey, cold kind of blue, and I'm using my favourite brush at the moment, which is a number 2 quill. It holds so much water and so much paint. I'm also, you'll notice, holding it quite high up. This is all to make myself, force myself be looser with my watercolour, and I'm going to use the brush strokes, flatten the brush out like this, use the brush to make those marks. Go in and clean my brush. I always keep, just off camera here, I always keep a cloth rather than using just tissue paper, because these brushes hold so much water and I've got a bad habit of putting them in my mouth, which I'm sure isn't a good idea, because I'm sure some of these pigments aren't good for us. Right, I'm now going to go and get some ultramarine blue. I can't see my palette at the moment, and I'm going to, on the outside shape, so we're painting in negative now, just being very careful around that eye, because this painting hinges, it's all about this eye. So again, just using the brush, flattening the brush against the paper and making those nice loose marks, and just see how that's forcing a texture from the watercolour, making it interesting. Dabbing it on my towel here to take off the excess water and paint that I don't want, and then I can go in with a little bit of a stronger colour and just emphasise some of that without overdoing it. Going to leave it alone pretty much. As this shape dries here, I'm going to want to go in and soften some of those edges. This brush is just absolutely gorgeous, really. Look at that. I can turn it, can you see that here? I can turn it into a fine edge there. I can make it into a point. I can really, if you've never used a quill brush, I would say get onto it. Traditionally, I've always used round brushes with a bit of a foray into flat brushes, but this is a game changer for me, this brush. And remembering when I can to hold it higher up. Quite pleased with that. Right, I'm going to go and get some, what should I go for? I think I'll go for some burnt sienna. And mix a little bit of that up in my palette. Dab a little bit off onto the brush, onto the towel, so I don't get too much water on there, but I want just enough. Bringing this brush up like that in one nice, simple, easy shape. And then I'm going to go in with a clean brush. With a clean brush. There we are. And just blur off those edges. I don't want the phthalo turquoise and the burnt sienna to mix too much. They make a green, beautiful in landscapes, but that's not what I want here. If I want to mix any blue with this burnt sienna, it's going to need to be ultramarine. That makes a beautiful dark. Right, so I'm going to come in, I'm going to hold my brush high, force me to be looser, and just come in with a shape here for the top of the head. Goodness knows what we're going to do here, but we're not caring too much, because if we care too much, we can't be loose, and that's important in my style of watercolour. Right, so I'm going to bring this burnt sienna in again at this other ear with one nice easy free stroke just up like that. I'm going to let some ultramarine dance into that shape there. Oh, look at that. Oh, I love the neutral shades that you can get with those two. Favourite colour combination. Get a little bit of that out there so it can flow. There we go, a little bit more ultramarine in, burnt sienna in there. So that'll do nicely. And I'll come round, and then I'm going to lose a lot of this. See how it's lost here? I'm going to do that, but in a much simpler way than I did when I made the first painting. Get a little bit of ultramarine and just describe the top of this ear with one little stroke. Look at that. No messing about. And ditto. I wonder if I should do it on the top of the other ear. I think I will. This time I'm going to mix my ultramarine and my burnt sienna to make a lovely dark shade. Get out the purple. I'm just going to come round this ear like that in one bold stroke. That is bold, isn't it? Take that up there just a little as well. Like I say, this is an exercise in loosening up, so we don't really care. And if there's an artist whose work you really like, mine included, I don't mind if you want to have a go at copying it. I don't get hung up on the whole copying thing. You know, we all learn from somebody. And when I was studying for my degree, which is in children's illustration, but that was a lifetime ago now. We used to make pastiches, is what they're called, when you copy other people's work, so you can learn, get a better feel for the way they work and improve your technique. Very carefully around this eye. There we go. And just bleed that out to the edge. I don't want a bit too much of something going on there, so I'm just going to dab some of this out. There we go. This is looking quite cool. Right, I need to get some, where should we go with it next? I'm putting off going in to the actual face. I do find hares really difficult, even though I paint a lot of them. I find it quite a challenging thing. So, and I don't know why. Owls, I am really good at painting owls. And bees. I can paint bees till the cows come home. It's funny, isn't it? You'd think everything would be you just paint anything. But I don't find it like that. So I like to challenge myself with hares. Oh, and I love them. I'm lucky I live out in the countryside and occasionally I get to see them, particularly in spring. I think it's around about May time. They box in the fields and it's lovely to see. So I've got my dark here. This is ultramarine and burnt sienna, though it's looking slightly green, so I've got a suspicion I've mixed some phthalo turquoise in there, but never mind. Let's get some burnt sienna on its own. Oh, and I'm going to bring in another colour in a second. Oh, I'm just using the brush now. Look at the brush, just putting the brush down to make those textures for me. I don't even have to do any work there. Look at that. Beautiful, beautiful. I'm going to bring in a little bit of burnt ultramarine, strengthen this shadow, and let that mix on the page. Just going to leave that there to do its magic. Keep this brush nice and clean. I always keep 2 pots of water next to me, really, so I don't have to go back into the kitchen very often, so often. Plus I've got the fire on today and I've got the big ginger cat lying by my feet and he kicks off whenever I want to move and he attacks my foot, so it's another reason to stay put. There we are. Right, a little bit of burnt sienna in that left cheek. There. And the jowl. I'm just dabbing that in. I'm not actually even painting, I'm just dabbing. I quite like what's happening here. When this paint here, let me use my other hand. Oh, you're nearly off the screen and I hardly noticed. Look at that. When this paint here, when the sheen has gone off it but it's still damp, it's called velvet. I really like that. And here I've got a spray bottle. This was a natural deodorant bottle, but it's just a small spray. That's quite important. And if you just, not spray, but just let it dribble there, when the paint is velvet, it should just give you some little dots of water, which will cause little back runs when the paint goes away. There we are. I'll let that do its thing there. going to go in with my nice pointy brush. Look, I can manually make that into a nice chisel shape just to give myself some... Oh, I really don't need to. I don't think it's adding anything to the painting, is it? It's doing well by itself. Right, we'll leave that there. I'm going to go in. This time I'm going to wet this area. This is a wet in wet technique now. So I'm just going to go in. I'm sorry about my hand. I'm left-handed, so I've had to set up my light and camera on the right side, so it's a bit awkward because really I'd like to be showing you excuse me, what's going on with my palette, but I can't fit it all in. Right, so I've wetted that area, so now it's just a simple case of going in, dropping in a little bit of burnt sienna, and I think just leaving that there. I really like that. I don't want to do too much. Maybe I'll get a little bit more down here just to describe this face shape, and come in a little bit. One of the things with watercolour is that just leave it alone. Let it do its thing within certain boundaries. Just leave it alone. I'm bringing in a little bit of yellow there, and I'm going to bring in some yellow here. Carefully, I'm just going to go, which way shall I go? I'm going to just touch that outside edge and flick that yellow across. I don't mind if they bleed a little bit, but I don't want them to bleed a lot, and I don't want that to go green. So where that's happened, actually, I think I'll just lift that out. There we go. I'm going to bring in some of this quinacridone gold. It is my favourite colour. And I'm just going to put this, drizzle this down the eye, like that, to describe that eye, and a little bit up there, up the ear. Okay, and also it's really sort of bright and golden. Or autumn leaves, it'd be beautiful for autumn leaves. I've only just ordered it, and I honestly use it all the time. There we go, that's nice. And I think I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to do a little bit of something to describe this nose shape, but I like this. I don't want to lose that, so I'm hesitant. Actually, I think I'll lift out that bit of yellow there because I want... Oh, lift it out, not put it in. I'll lift out that little bit of yellow here. One of the things about watercolour that had me for years is it's unlike other mediums in that you can't really reclaim your white once it's gone. But I've developed a lot over the last couple of years, and that concern that was always a worry, it's like, oh, once it's down, you can't lift it, you're stuck with it, actually isn't true. There's so much you can do with watercolour, and I'll show you my beautiful ink in a minute. I want my one concession: I never use body colour, never use a heavy colour, a gouache type of thing, apart from I have got the most amazing white that really, if you're careful with it, can really just lift a painting and also solve a problem if you've got one. So, you know, that's worth having. And this brush. Painting such a small painting with such a big brush, I know the temptation is to go in with a small brush and pay attention to the details, which is great, but this isn't about that. And we will pay attention to some details, but it's going to be the focus. It's going to be the eye. And I'm just blurring out some of the edges here now. Nice clean brush, dab it on my towel and just go in sympathetic movements to the direction of the fur. That's quite important. I love ceramics, and I sort of like when I'm working with clay, I'll sort of stroke the clay as if I'm stroking, say I'm making a hare, stroking the back of the hair. And it's a bit similar with watercolour, you know, you can sympathise with the shapes. And when you go into a semi-dry wash like that with a little bit of clean water, you disturb the pigment. I don't want to mess with it too much, but you can just force it into little areas so you get these nice little interesting little textures. Now here I've got some hair. I may not be able to do it with this brush. I'm just going to flick into it. I haven't got much water on my brush because I don't want it to puddle and back run too much. I'm in control here, apparently. I think I'll leave that like that. I'm quite pleased with it. I'll go in with my white at the end. I'll get a little bit of something to just describe. Shall I describe up here? I might carry this on actually, just to describe that shape there. Go in with a negative. Right, so I'm going to take some clean water and just, again, use my brush, use the belly of my brush, press it down, and out we go. Leaving probably a few white bits. I've no idea, I can't see. I hope you're not getting too much sheen with the light here. And then I'm going to go on with my ultramarine blue and just press it in and let it fade out to the edges. Not going to do too much there at all. Just loosely describe a little bit of that white shape, not all of it. Letting some of the lines go, I think, is really important in this type of loose watercolour. You know, don't go all around the edges, don't describe all the edges. It's amazing what the eye fills in and what the eye wants to do as well. There we go, I'm pleased with that. I think I'll leave that there. And then when it's dry, I'll just, oh no, I haven't done the nose. Although I need to let that dry first before I do that. I might go in with a little tiny bit of spattering now so that it can be blending in. I'll use a smaller, any old brush for my spattering because that one holds too much water and it gets way too carried away. So a little bit of burnt sienna mixed with a little bit of ultramarine, and then I'm just going to tap that with my finger and just let that, a little bit of it's gone on the wet paint, which is great, that's what I want, and a little bit of it's gone on dry, also what I want. Any that I don't want, I'm just going to dab up with a tissue. Any that I want a little bit lighter, I'm just going to gently touch with the tissue. But I'm quite pleased with the way that's gone. Now I'm going to make some, a few more in very pale ultramarine. And this time I'm going to just make bigger spatters by flicking the brush like that. That's lovely. Take a couple of those out. I don't need all of those, don't want all of those. Just do it by intuition really. Does it look nice? Does it not? There we go. Lovely. I like that very much. And I'm just going to continue those ultramarine spatters. They'll get lost in this wet wash that we've just put down here. Yeah, very nice. Right, I'll let that dry and I'll come back and we'll just finish off with this nose and a little tiny bit of white. Hi. So, I got the hairdryer, actually really did, got a hairdryer onto it and tried it off, and now I'm going to go in and get that nose in. And because this beautiful number 2 quill, look at the size of it, it's huge, it's huge. Because it makes such a beautiful fine point, I can even go in and do this nose. Look at that. Just a very simple line to a very simple point. And I can shape that on my towel and go in and do the other side. I'm going to draw this line down the middle, making a nice fine point out of my brush. Look how fine that'll go, it's incredible! And do this little mouth, which I'm just going to do. What you can do with this brush is make a chisel out of it with your finger and then just dot that shape in. If it's not quite dark enough, go back in, drop a little bit more colour in that wet paint and it'll just spread nicely by itself. So there we go, that'll do for that. When that's dry, or semi-dry, I'll come in, because I've used Payne's Grey here, one of my favourite colours, and I'll come in and just blur those edges out a little bit to give us a little bit of shading down here underneath the nose. Now then, this painting is all about this eye. and I am going to go in with my great big brush. I want this to be really nice and clean because I want it to be bright. What you can do in this type of watercolour painting is choose your focus, make that detailed, and then everything else just blurs out, and the eye wants to make sense of things. So it's surprising what you can get away with, you know, with like losing these edges. I'm going to rub that out completely, that won't even be there. But the eye will know. Right, now this, I'm going to use quite strong paint. This is a cadmium scarlet. It's a very orange colour. And I'm going to draw the outside of this eye here. And then I'm going to clean my brush, make sure it's absolutely scrupulously clean. I do not want a muddy yellow in here. And the same with my palette, make sure I'm not picking up any dirty paint. And make it nice and strong. Dab it, I think we'll see here, dab the excess water off my brush. Pick up a little bit more paint, look at that, make sure the point is how I want it to be. And then I'm going to go in and draw in that yellow. And that'll bleed into the orange. A very gentle feather-like touch with that. Now I need that to dry before I go putting the iris in, otherwise it'll be a right old mess. And also to put my darks around that eye as well. Whilst we're waiting for that to dry, I'll clean off my brush. I'm absolutely saturating this towel, and I will just go in. And I'm now that this is a nice technique that I've recently taught myself. With this brush, this beautiful, beautiful brush, make it into a nice, it's called a cat's tongue. You can get brushes that are this shape, it's called a cat tongue. Make so it's like a chisel on both sides, like that. Gorgeous shape. And then with that shape, just pull down some of this grey from the nose. Lose some of those hard edges, and also describe a bit of a shadow under this nose and also under the top lip, and maybe even coming down with a little bit of the paint that you've picked up on your brush, which is a nice thing to do. Just come down with a little bit more shadow under this chin. And I'm going to do this, use this with my cat's tongue shape that I've just made with my brush. I'm going to bring a little bit more blue in and describe a little bit of that first shape like that. Not much. I've used phthalo blue there, unwittingly. It's all very dark on my palette, and my light is over here, so my palette's in the shade a little bit. Right, just get a few first shapes. There we go, blend those in. I don't want too much blue going on around this quinacridone gold because it all goes a bit green. I don't really want that. Ultramarine and burnt sienna are the two colours you need if you want to make your nice darks out of those types of colours, which I absolutely do. I love them. Painting with just those two colours is possibly one of my favourite colour combinations. The range of darks and things that you can get is just lovely. Just going in. Now then, with a dry brush, so I've got my strong colour, which is my ultramarine and burnt sienna mix. That nice strong colour, quite thick paint. I'm just going to brush most of it off whilst making, you see that, whilst making a chisel shape with my brush. And then I'm going to go in and I'm just going to make some, I want this to be dry brush so that there's little bits of white. It's not really happening for me because my towel's too wet, so it's okay, not to worry. Just describe a little bit of hair there, and I'm going to soften this edge. Now then, at this point you have to sort of take a bit of a step back and don't overwork it. Alright, I'm waiting for this eye to dry. I also want to get a little bit of white in there. So while we're waiting for that eye, just have a look, just move it around, move your head around, check how glossy that is. There's still quite a bit of sheen on that eye there, so I need to leave it a little while. This, I hope you can see, is my new ink, and I absolutely love it. Zig Cartooning white ink, and it's a very opaque white. You can reclaim the white of your painting with this, and it is absolutely beautiful. Right, so with nothing special, just a cheap brush, I'm going to pull it into a chisel shape. I'm going to go into my white paint, and on my paper here, up here out of the way, can you see that? I don't think you can. On the white of my paper behind here, I'm just taking off a lot of the paint, and then I'm going to go in, I'm going to make a couple of, this is more like it. Do you see where it's just skipping over the paper, giving me that broken line? That's exactly what I want to describe the fur there. And you see how white that is? That's really giving me my white paper back. I need to go up a little bit there to blend that in. Right, so I'm just going to do a little bit of these. That one was a bit heavy, not to mind, and just scuff it out with my finger. There we go. That's described how furry that ear is, hasn't it? I could go in down here, just do a little bit, perhaps. Tiny little bit, not much. I don't want to do much. I don't want to overdo it. Don't make me overdo it. So easy at this point. Right, I've got some beautiful whiskers, and I want to put those whiskers in. Hare's whiskers are magnificent. So we need to, I want to break this shape up just a little bit, perhaps, with a little bit of a something, don't know, just a bit of that. Scuff it off with my finger. What you can do as well while that paint's wet, dip your finger in the water and just move that along a bit like that. Might go in just like that. This paint also, by the way, let's do one of these just for the sake of showing you. Get some very, very clean water. Where would I like to be white that isn't white at the moment? I'm going to go, difficult to know, I quite like it all as it is. I'll do it in here just for the sake of showing you, right? Even though that's already got a bit of white on it. Get my white, might even be able to use this white that I've put up here, no, that's dried. Get my white and just dab that on, and look how that flows. It's not a very good example of it because I haven't used enough and I don't want to, but it flows out beautifully. So you can experiment with that. Right, are we ready now for whiskers? I think I'm ready for whiskers. Clean that brush off, pop it away. Somewhere over here I've got a number 3 rigger brush. It's a little thick for what I want, but I don't have a number 1, I've got one on order. So I'm going to just dip into my paint, dip into the water, get myself, I don't want it completely thick, I don't want it completely coverage, I want a little bit of translucency here. So let's try and find a dry piece of cloth. See, here's my brush. Just going to get some of that water out of the top end of my brush because I don't, look, I've got some, so I don't want that to be flowing down and getting me unexpectedly and flowing out onto the paper when I'm trying to draw a nice thin line. So I'm just going to have a look at my reference photo, look at the direction those whiskers are coming down in, and I'm just going to, with a nice, simple, confident curve, I'm just going to put some of those shapes in there like that. Put some whiskers in, it looks great. And we'll do some at the top here. I'm not getting round far enough, am I? A little bit more paint. Make sure I've got my rigger brush at a nice fine point. Nice easy action. Let's try holding this brush a little higher up. No, I haven't got the confidence quite to do that. I'm going to hold it further down to get my curve, because you only get one shot at these curves. There we go. That's nice. Lovely. And I'm just going to go in with a little bit of white here. Now, another thing that you can do, I like that. See how we've just expressed the furriness of this creature without getting too detailed and too bogged down with it. Another thing you can do with this white paint that is really, really nice, and I call it salt and pepper, is seasoning your painting at the end. Get any old brush, not too fat, a brush, get some white paint, quite thin, don't want this too strong. And you don't want too much paint on your brush either, so you're going to have to just experiment with this. And then where you've put the dark spatters, just go in and put some light spatters. You can do it like that. I find I've got more control if I do it, tap it with my finger like this. You can also, don't use that brush, Emma, you can also get this kind of thing on the go. You get a smaller spatter, well, usually, but you also get slightly less control. I don't need them on there, they're adding nothing to my painting. So I'll spatter those off. I'll do a couple more around here maybe. Yeah, I like those around the ear. And I'll just take them off the head, I don't want them there. Okay, and I might have a few more here, just for balance. She's looking really good. I think I prefer him to the original Hare actually. Right, are we dry with that eye? I think it's dry. I think we can go in. Put the lid on my beautiful white ink. And then with a small brush, what should we choose? Or should we, no, I'm not going to be super brave and use the great big one. I'm not going to use a rigger, it's too long, I haven't got enough control. I'm going to use my other quill. A smaller one. I've got a smaller one on order still, and I can't wait to get that one. Right, so with my smaller quill, which is still a massive brush for doing a small detail, but because of the point it holds, it's just delightful. Right, and then I'm going to go in with a thick Payne's grey. I never use black. Some watercolourists do, some watercolourists don't. I don't like it personally, but I love Payne's grey, and it goes as dark as you like, but very often for darks I'll use a violet and ultramarine and burnt sienna. I keep coming back to those. So that's it really. That's that iris in, and you can see how that's nice and strong. The warm colour of the orange and the yellow draws your eye to it against the blues. And all I'm going to do now is get that hood in. They've got quite extensive eyelashes. That line was a bit thick, but never mind. There we go, that'll do. And then same at the bottom. I'll do a little bit in the corner here, and then just come round the eye. This is the only bit that we've really been careful with. Another again with the eyelashes. I'm going to wipe most of the colour off my brush, give it a chisel shape on the towel, and then just come down and do those eyelashes. That's lovely. I've come out too far here. I can either correct it or I can leave it alone. But being me, I'll fiddle. Just lift that out with the chisel shape of the brush. There we go. And that's it. I think that's him pretty much finished, and I'm really pleased. One tiny last little fiddle. I'm going to get a little bit of ultramarine down here, just with the shape of the brush, and I am done. I'm delighted. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. Subscribe to my website, subscribe to my YouTube channel. That'd be fantastic if you do that, and hopefully you'll enjoy seeing some more of my videos that are going to be coming up quite soon. Thanks very much. Have a beautiful day.